Okay, now we're back to part two. Like I said, the Heenan family was just a dominant stable, and it had a list of who's who of heels at the time. And some guys made their name just from being in the stable. And this stable was just dominant in the WWF in the early part of the late part of the 80s toward the early 90s. This was just a stable that most people were talking about, and a very underrated stable at that too. Number five, I got Evolution. This was a very good stable. It's sort of reminiscent of the Four Horsemen, as you had Ric Flair as the leader, well, Triple H as the leader, Ric Flair as the second leader or the manager in a manager role. You had Randy Orton and Batista, and all four of these guys were just running roughshod in the WWF as Evolution in 2003. This was just a stable that just that had everybody at the time just hate them, and they wanted to get their hands on them and try to get rid of them out of the WWF. You had Triple H in the stable who was feuding with just basically everybody. He was feuding with Goldberg at the time when the group got formed, or yeah, it was feuding with Goldberg, Booker T, and everybody else of that nature. You had Randy Orton feuding with Mick Foley, RVD, and other guys like that. You had Batista just floating around, but he was sort of like the guy that sort of was the one you had to answer to. And then if that, yes, Batista was the one you had to answer to in order to get to Triple H. Then you had to get to Randy Orton, and then you had to get to Ric Flair, and then you finally had to get to Triple H to sort of get rid of the group as all. But this group was just dominating and ran roughshod over the WWF, destroying guys left from right. And then they had that old saying, when something passes you by, evolution just it means evolution just passed you by. And they just weren't kidding, as they were just dominating guys. They came in and just destroyed people. they broke they broke Goldberg's legs storyline wise. They destroyed Scott Steiner. They destroyed they destroyed Booker T. They just came into the ring as a group. When basically, if you saw one, you were gonna pretty much see four in the ring at the same time when you were having a match with one of them. And that's pretty much what this group was. As you just had four guys who just beat the hell out of you, and you never really got a one-on-one confrontation with one guy, because three other guys would come in and be a part of it at the same time. And that's what made this group just so dominant, is it just destroyed everyone in its path. And like I said, it was reminiscent of the Four Horsemen, how they used to be, as they were just ruling the WWE at the time in 2003 with this group. It's a shame that this group split up in 2004, as they were trying to push Randy Orton and they were trying to get Batista on his own. But really, if this group would have stayed a little bit longer, who knows what would have became of this group. And that's one of the reasons why I got it at number five, as this was just a dominant group. Number four, I got the Hart Foundation. This was a very good group, it consisted of Bret the Hitman Hart, who was the leader of the group. It consisted of Owen Hart, British Bulldog, Brian Pillman, and I believe that was it. Yeah, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Jim the Anvil Neidhart was the powerhouse of the group. Owen Hart was the technical wrestler of the group, well, also the technical high flyer wrestler of the group. Brian Pillman was the loose cannon of the group. British Bulldog was the powerhouse, and this stable was just awesome. I mean, it just ran roughshod over the WWF towards I believe, the middle part, the summer of 1997. Well, no, not the fall of 1997, or the spring of 1997. My bad, spring of 1997. This group just ran roughshod over the WWF, as it was just feuding and getting on everybody's nerves and getting on under people's skin. Mostly guys like Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, and guys like that. And sort of the same with Evolution. Whenever you see one guy, you'll basically see every other guy in the ring, and that's who you had to contend with, as this group just beat down everybody in its path. And it had people just wanting to get their hands on them, and mostly Bret Hart, who they wanted to get their hands on. And like I said, you had to go through every single member, the other members of that group, just to get your hands on Bret Hart. and that's what made this group just so dominant and just so exciting, as they just beat down and took names and left a path of destruction on their way, and they would always try to start something with somebody, even when they really weren't feuding with that person. They would just start something with that person, and they had a whole lot of enemies to go with the ones that they had previously, and that's what made this group just so dominant. Is they just had a group of good talkers and a whole bunch of guys in the group who had their own traits, had their own type of traits in this group. And that's one of the reasons why I got it at number 4, as this was just an exciting group. Number 3, I got DX. I guess you can say both versions, the Shawn Michaels, Rick Rude, and China version, and then the version where they had X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws in China. This was just a very good group. The Shawn Michaels, Rick Rude group was just running roughshod over the WWF with their antics and setting up and starting feuds with just about anybody in the group. You had them starting feuds with the Hart Foundation. They were sort of getting in between with the Nation. Well, they sort of brainwashed the Nation into believing that the Hart Foundation was the one that wanted to start the feud with them, and they were just using all their antics and tricks just to get under people's skin, and most people bought into it, and they were just liking what DX was doing because of what they were doing with their sophomore acts and just doing whatever they want to do type of attitude. And then of course when you had the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac involved in there, it was sort of the same thing, as they were just doing whatever they want to do, pissing people off, starting feuds like what they had with the Nation. And this was just a very good group altogether, and this was one of the best stables in my opinion. And that's one of the reasons why I got them at number 3, and why most stables try to create what this stable tried to create, but they failed unsuccessfully. But still, very good stable. One of the reasons why I got it at number 3. Number 2, I got the NWO. What can you say? This was a very dominant stable when it formed. It started off with Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. Then it sort of expanded with the Giant, Kurt Hennig, Million Dollar Man, Syxx. Well, Ted DiBiase, Syxx, and Vincent, and then you know the rest. And it was just dominating WCW, doing what it wants, taking over WCW Nitro, and just basically, it was like a cancer at WCW, as it was just dominating WCW to the point where you had guys turning on WCW just to join this group so they won't get beat down, and then they would beat down some of the wrestlers in WCW, and it was just a very dominant stable. My only main gripe about this group though was the fact that they just added so many members where they should have just stuck with the 3 members that they had, as it was just going good with the 3 members, but they felt they had to add more members. And then the other main gripe was they had other guys get in the act as well, as they had the Black and White NWO and the Wolfpack NWO. Although I did like the Wolfpack, it did get repetitive after a while. I still liked them, but they should have just stuck with what they had, and they should have had the group in when they should have had the group in when Sting should have been the one to beat Hulk Hogan at Starrcade cleanly, but they felt they had to continue, and thus this group became overkill. But still, very good, dominant group. One of the reasons why I got it at number 2. And then finally, number 1, the group that sort of started the trend of wrestling factions or wrestling stables. I got the 4 Horsemen. This was just a dominant stable, as it just ran roughshod over WCW. They would beat down guys outside of the wrestling ring, attack them from behind, and just basically do whatever they want. They rode limousines, they ran and they were flying in jets, they had all the women and everything else, and basically it was just like a mob type of group, as you just beat down people. And and got rid of the problems that they had, and that's what made this one of the best stables of all time. As it just was just a stable that just beat down people, had everything. They wore the nice clothes, the nice watches, and everything else. And it's just one of the reasons why I got them at number one. Anyhow, rate, comment, and I'm out.